The hospital hallway was too quiet for a Tuesday morning. The hum of fluorescent lights echoed above, the scent of antiseptic sharp enough to sting. A little girl sat alone on a hard plastic chair, her legs swinging just above the floor. In her lap rested a tattered teddy bear whose fur was rubbed thin from years of love. "Daddy said he'd come soon," she whispered to it, voice trembling just enough to make the moment ache. Behind the reception counter, a nurse glanced up from her screen. Her name tag caught the light. Evelyn Harper, RN. Her expression was practiced indifference, the look of someone who'd seen too many emergencies. "And to few thank yous, sweetheart," she said. "You can't sit here. This area's for patients only." The girl blinked up at her. "But I am a patient," Evelyn sighed, rubbing at her temple. "Name, Emma." "Emma what? I don't know." "You don't know your last name?" Evelyn muttered under her breath. "Where are your parents?" Emma's voice shrank to a whisper. "My dad's working here. He said he'd come after his meeting." Evelyn exhaled sharply. "Sweetheart, no one leaves a child alone in a hospital. Sit quietly, or I'll have to call security." Emma nodded, hugging the bear to her chest, trying not to cry. From across the hall, a doctor slowed as he passed just for a heartbeat but then hurried on. The girl sat perfectly still, swallowed by the white noise of machines and murmured footsteps. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the tall windows. Storm's coming, Evelyn thought, typing harder, her keyboard clattering like distant rain. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." "Look, kid," Evelyn said after a while, not looking up, "if you're sick, you need paperwork. Otherwise, wait in the lobby." Emma's voice quivered. "My chest hurts when I breathe." The nurse froze for half a second. "Everyone says that," she snapped. "Go wait outside, please." Emma nodded and slipped off the chair, her small shoes squeaking against the tile. She made it only a few steps before she stumbled, then crumpled. The sound of her fall shattered the sterile quiet. Evelyn jerked her head up. "Emma?" The child was on the floor, gasping for air. The teddy bear lay beside her like a fallen guardian. Instinct took over. Evelyn sprinted forward, kneeling beside the tiny body. Hey, stay with me." She checked the pulse, weak and fluttering. "Call pediatrics now." She shouted toward the desk. A second nurse grabbed the phone. Footsteps pounded. A stretcher screeched in from the hall. Emma's chest rose and fell in desperate rhythm. Evelyn held her trembling hand, guilt stabbing through her with every shallow breath. "Stay with me, sweetheart. You're okay. You're safe." Emma's lips trembled. "Daddy, don't leave him." Evelyn snatched up the bear and pressed it into her arms. "He's right here, I promise." The stretcher rolled, voices overlapping, BP dropping oxygen. "Move. Move." As they rushed her through the double doors into pediatrics, Evelyn followed without thinking, heart pounding so hard she could hear it echo inside her skull. They reached the emergency bay. The monitors flared to life, beeping wildly. A doctor with tight curls and kind eyes, Dr. Lily Chen, snapped orders. "Oh, mask. 4, chest x-ray." Now, Evelyn stayed at the bedside, hands trembling as she smoothed the blanket over Emma's small frame. The mask fogged with every uneven breath. Lily glanced at her. "You the admitting nurse?" Evelyn nodded numbly. She just collapsed. Said her chest hurt." "Okay, good catch," Lily said, focusing on the monitor. But Evelyn barely heard her. She kept seeing the moment before, the way she'd looked at the girl like she was a problem instead of a person. Minutes bled into a blur of commands and alarms. Slowly, Emma's oxygen climbed. Her color returned, faint but real. Evelyn exhaled shakily. Lily gave a small nod. "She's stabilizing." Evelyn forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's good. That's really good." She turned to the corner computer, logging the incident. "Under Guardian." She hesitated, then typed, "Father works on site. Name unknown." Her gaze wandered to a nameplate outside the office across the corridor. Dr. Michael Turner, hospital director. She'd passed it hundreds of times, never noticed the reflection it threw in the sterile light. Something about that name stuck in her chest like a held breath. Lily's voice broke the silence. "We'll transfer her once labs come back. Get some air." "Evelyn, you look pale." But she didn't move. She watched the tiny figure on the bed, the rhythmic blip of life returning on the monitor. Then she whispered, barely audible even to herself, "I should have listened." Outside, the storm cracked open. Rain slammed against the windows as if the sky itself was trying to wash away her mistake. Evelyn closed her eyes, the sound wrapping around her like penance. She didn't know it yet, but the man whose name gleamed on that office door, the man she'd soon meet, was the very father of the girl she'd just yelled at. And when he found out, her whole world would tilt. The man's footsteps echoed, sharp, uneven, desperate. His badge swung with each stride, and Evelyn could see the tremor in his hands even from a distance. His voice, low but breaking, reached her before he did. "Where's my daughter?" They said she collapsed. "Where is she?" For a second, Evelyn couldn't move. The storm outside flashed again, lighting the hallway like a camera flash, freezing her guilt in place. The box of masks slipped from her grip, scattering across the floor. She bent to gather them, but her fingers wouldn't work. The man was already past her, pushing through the pediatric doors. "Sir, you can't," she started, then stopped, because as the door swung shut, she saw the impossible, the man's name badge. Dr. Michael Turner, hospital director. Her throat closed. The very name she had stared at hours, maybe minutes ago, now flesh, voice, panic. She stumbled after him. Inside, Lily looked up in surprise. "Dr. Turner?" "She's stable, but he wasn't listening. He went straight to the small bed. "Emma, baby, I'm here." Emma's weak smile cracked something inside the room. "Daddy." Her voice was barely air, but it carried louder than thunder. Evelyn froze at the doorway, unseen but burning under the weight of what she'd said, what she'd done. "Sit quietly or I'll call security." The words clawed through her memory, cruel and cold in hindsight. Michael brushed his hand over Emma's hair, his voice soft but trembling. "You scared me. You promised you'd stay with Miss Carla at the office." Emma shook her head slightly. "She went to get snacks. I wanted to find you. You were gone so long." Lily gently adjusted the four. "She's going to be fine now, Dr. Turner. Early pneumonia, some respiratory distress. We've got her on antibiotics and oxygen." He nodded, eyes glassy. "Thank you." Then he looked up and saw Evelyn. His face changed. The frantic father vanished. The director returned. "Were you the one who found her?" Evelyn's mouth went dry. "Yes, sir. She was sitting outside the nurse's station. Said her chest hurt." He stepped closer. "And you didn't check her in?" The air between them crackled louder than the storm outside. "I thought she was waiting for someone," Evelyn stammered. "I didn't realize. You didn't realize a child saying she's sick might actually be sick." His voice was low, dangerous in its restraint. What if she hadn't collapsed? Would she have just walked out? Evelyn's breath hitched. There was no defense that didn't sound like failure. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Michael closed his eyes, hand gripping the rail of the bed. For a long second, the only sound was the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Lily broke the silence. "Dr. Turner, she's stable now." "Let's not." But Evelyn stepped forward before Lily could shield her. "He's right. I failed her." Michael turned toward her again, but this time, something flickered behind his anger. "Exhaustion, maybe, fear, humanity. You've been here how long?" He asked quietly. 10 years, she said. I don't need your record." He looked at his daughter again, then back at her. "I just need to know how this happened." Evelyn swallowed. "Because I stopped seeing children. I saw names, paperwork, complaints. Not faces, not her." The room felt heavier after that. Even the monitors seemed to hush. Lily placed a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder, silently telling her it was enough. But Evelyn couldn't look away from the small figure in the bed. "I'm sorry, Emma," she whispered. "I should have listened." Emma blinked drowsily, eyes soft with forgiveness only children have. "It's okay," she murmured. "You helped after. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think." Michael sat down beside his daughter's bed, the tension in his shoulders slowly melting as he held her tiny hand. Evelyn turned to leave, her heart heavier than her footsteps. But before she reached the door, Michael called after her. "Nurse Evelyn." She stopped. He hesitated, his voice quieter now. "Thank you for staying." Evelyn turned just enough to nod. "Always." Outside the room, the storm had begun to quiet. Rain tapped against the windows, softer now, almost like an apology. Evelyn leaned against the wall, sliding down until she was sitting on the cold tile. She pressed her hands to her face and let the tears come. Not loud, just real. Down the hall, Lily peeked out, watching her. She didn't interrupt. Sometimes, guilt was a kind of medicine that needed to burn before it healed. Hours passed. By afternoon, the hallway lights dimmed to evening mode, and Evelyn stood again. She walked to the nearest vending machine and bought 2 cups. Turner's chair when he wasn't looking. Emma's monitor beeped steadily now, each tone a heartbeat that whispered, "She's still here." Evelyn looked once more before leaving for the night, a silent vow in her chest that she'd never let exhaustion steal her empathy again. The rain had washed the streets clean by morning. A thin mist clung to the hospital windows as dawn crept in, painting the sky in soft bruised colors, violet and gold stitched together by exhaustion. Evelyn arrived before her shift, the familiar scent of coffee and disinfectant wrapping around her like a habit she couldn't quit. She hesitated outside the pediatric ward door, palms damp, wondering if she should even be there. Part of her wanted to disappear into the background, blend into the blur of scrubs and duty, but something in her chest urged otherwise. Guilt had a way of turning into purpose if you faced it long enough. Inside, the room was quiet except for the rhythmic hum of machines and the faint melody of a cartoon. Playing low on the TV, Emma was awake, propped up by pillows, coloring with a nurse's pen on a paper towel. Her teddy sat beside her, wearing a tiny hospital mask. The sight cracked a small, reluctant smile on Evelyn's face. "Hey," she said softly from the doorway. Emma looked up. "You came back," Evelyn nodded. "I told you I would." Michael sat nearby, dark circles beneath his eyes, time missing. Shirt sleeves rolled up. He glanced at Evelyn with cautious neutrality. Not anger, not forgiveness, something in between. "Morning," he said quietly. "Morning, sir," she replied, keeping her tone professional, but her heart wasn't steady. "You don't have to be here," he added. "I know," she said, stepping closer. "But I wanted to." Emma held up her masterpiece, a shaky crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. One was small with curly hair, one tall with glasses, and one had a big blue scribble that looked like a nurse's uniform. "This one's you," she said shyly. Evelyn blinked. "Me?" Emma nodded, proud. "'Cause you helped." Michael looked at the drawing too. Something softened in his face. Maybe he saw what Evelyn couldn't, that sometimes forgiveness begins with crayons and small hands. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was healing in its own way, fragile but real. After a while, Michael stood. "I have a quick meeting with board members. She's stable enough for a few minutes." He turned to Evelyn. "Would you stay with her?" Evelyn hesitated. "Of course." When he left, Emma smiled faintly. "Daddy's always working. Because he loves you," Evelyn said. "I know. But sometimes I wish he'd just sit." She frowned. "Grown-ups forget to sit." Evelyn laughed softly through her ache. "Yeah, we do." Emma drew another line on the paper towel, a big yellow sun, right above their stick figure heads. "I think you were just tired yesterday," she said without looking up. Evelyn's throat tightened. "You think so? Huh? Daddy says tired hearts say mean things." That small sentence hit her harder than she expected. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." Evelyn watched Emma's slow, careful coloring, the way she pressed so gently on the crayon, as if the paper might bruise. "You're a wise little girl," she murmured. Emma grinned, missing one front tooth. "Daddy says I'm 7 going on 70. Laughter filled the sterile air, soft and healing. Outside the glass, the world went on, cars honking, nurses changing shifts, orderlies swapping gossip by the elevators. Inside the small room, time moved differently. The beeping monitors became background music to a kind of quiet redemption. When Michael returned, his voice was steadier. "How's our artist doing?" "Almost done," Emma said, holding up the drawing again. "I made a sun this time." For her, Michael's eyes met Evelyn's. There was something new there, gratitude. Maybe understanding. She always notices the light, he said softly. Evelyn nodded, feeling a warmth rise in her chest she hadn't felt in months. That's a good thing to notice. Emma yawned, sleep tugging at her. Can you stay until I nap? Of course, Evelyn whispered. Michael watched the nurse gently pull the blanket up to his daughter's chin. For the first time, he saw beyond her mistake. He saw a woman who cared deeply, who had simply cracked under the weight of 100 cries and no rest when Emma drifted off. Evelyn whispered, she's special, you know. Michael nodded. She's all I have left. His voice trembled on the last word. Evelyn frowned softly. I didn't mean to pry, but it's okay, he said, eyes glassy. Her mother passed last year. Cancer. Emma was there for every appointment, every hospital visit. That's why she's not scared of these halls. He paused, staring at the child sleeping peacefully. She thinks hospitals fix everyone. Evelyn's heart clenched. And you? He gave a sad half smile. I'm still trying to believe that too. For a while, neither of them spoke. The morning light fell across Emma's bed, and dust particles drifted lazily in the beam. Tiny stars suspended in silence. Evelyn finally said, for what it's worth, sir. You're doing better than most. Michael exhaled, the weight of grief and relief tangled together. So are you? Evelyn didn't expect those words to mean so much. In that quiet hospital room, surrounded by beeping machines and the faint hum of rain, two broken adults found a fragment of understanding, the kind that didn't need forgiveness yet, but hinted that it might come. Days passed, the hospital rhythm steady as breathing. The rain cleared, replaced by sunlight that spilled gently across Emma's window each morning. Her cheeks had color again, her cough now a memory fading into warmth. Evelyn still came by after her shifts, not because duty required it, but because something deeper pulled her back. She'd bring tiny surprises, a paper flower folded from a medication wrapper, a cartoon face drawn on a glove balloon, or a juice box with a smiley sticker. Emma collected them on her bedside table like treasures. You make boring days less boring, she'd giggle. One afternoon, Evelyn walked in to find Michael sitting beside his daughter, reading from a book about stars. His voice was softer than usual, and for the first time, he wasn't wearing his white coat. Just a simple gray sweater. She says stars don't die, Michael said, glancing at Evelyn. They just change shape. Evelyn smiled faintly. She's not wrong. Emma looked up, excitement flickering in her eyes. Nurse Evelyn, Daddy said when I get better, he'll take me to see the stars for real. There's a place with big telescopes and everything. That's wonderful, Evelyn said, her heart easing. Michael chuckled, though it sounded tired. She keeps me accountable. Evelyn lingered near the window, the sky turning amber beyond the glass. For the first time in a long while, she felt something inside her shift, the faint return of purpose, of what had once made her love this job. As Emma began another drawing, Michael looked over. You remind her of her mother, he said quietly. The words startled her. How so? She was a nurse too. Kind, patient, but she'd burn herself out trying to fix everyone. He paused, eyes distant. Sometimes I wonder if I asked too much of her. Evelyn lowered her gaze. We all give too much sometimes, especially to strangers who need more than we have. Michael nodded slowly. That's what she used to say. The air between them softened again. Outside, a bird perched on the windowsill, tapping its beak on the glass, a small life reminding them the world still moved. Emma finished her drawing, 3 figures again, this time standing under a big blue sky filled with yellow stars. This one's called When Everyone's Happy Again, she said proudly. Michael brushed a tear before it could fall. You have quite the artist's heart. Emma smiled, tilting her head. I learned it from Mommy. Silence rippled through the room like a gentle wave. Evelyn bit her lip, unsure if she should say something. But Michael only smiled sadly and stroked his daughter's hair. Yes, you did. The heart monitor beeped steadily. A sound that once symbolized fear but now felt like rhythm. Steady, human, alive. Evelyn took a deep breath. She's healing well, she said softly. You both are. Maybe, Michael replied. But sometimes healing looks like pretending you're okay until it becomes true. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. Or until someone reminds you it's okay not to pretend. Her words hung in the air, tender and true. If that moment hit you hard, leave a. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Emma began to hum, a soft, sleepy tune that sounded like a lullaby too old for her years. Evelyn recognized it. It was one nurses often sang in the neonatal ward during long nights. Michael listened quietly, closing the book of stars. She heard that song the night her mom passed. He said after a while, "She doesn't remember much, but she remembers the sound." Evelyn's chest ached. Grief keeps the sound long after it forgets the words. He nodded, eyes glistening. "You ever lose someone?" "Yes," she said simply. "My brother. Years ago. I stopped singing after that." Michael studied her face. "Then maybe it's time to start again." Something in his voice, gentle, certain, made her heart tremble. They sat in silence as twilight settled, hospital lights flickering on, and the hallway outside filled with the low hum of wheels and whispers. The world moved on, as it always did, but in that small room, time bent around three people who had somehow found each other in the wreckage of their own losses. When Michael finally left for a board call, Evelyn tucked the blanket under Emma's chin and whispered, "Sleep, little star." Emma smiled in her half-dream. "Will you As she turned off the light, she looked at the drawing taped above the bed. 3 figures beneath a sky full of stars. For the first time, she believed it could be true. Morning arrived soft and golden, sunlight slipping between the blinds like gentle fingers. The hospital was quieter than usual, that strange calm between night shifts and visiting hours. Evelyn entered with her badge clipped crooked and her heart oddly light. She carried a small breakfast tray for Emma, oatmeal with a smile drawn in syrup, a folded napkin shaped like a flower. Inside the room, Emma sat up with her teddy on her lap, humming the same lullaby from last night. Her voice was thin but sweet, filling the air like light does after rain. Michael stood by the window, his back to the room, hands in his pockets. He turned as Evelyn came in, the faintest smile tugging at his mouth. "You're early again," he said softly. "Couldn't sleep," Evelyn replied, setting the tray down. "Thought I'd start the day right." Emma's eyes brightened. "You brought breakfast. It's happy oatmeal." "That's the plan," Evelyn laughed, helping her adjust the tray. Michael watched the two of them, his daughter giggling, Evelyn smiling, and for a fleeting moment, his world didn't feel so heavy. "She's due for her final x-ray this afternoon," Evelyn said, checking the chart. "If it's clear, she'll be able to go home soon." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? Home? Evelyn nodded. Home. The little girl squealed and hugged her bear tight. "I'm gonna tell Teddy." Michael chuckled, then looked at Evelyn. "You've been here every day since that first morning." "You didn't have to. I wanted to," she said. "You can't unsee what your heart needs to fix." He nodded slowly. "I used to think I could control everything. The schedules, the staff, the hospital itself. But the truth is, I was just trying to hold together what was left of my family." Evelyn leaned on the bed rail, her voice gentle. "Control's a comfort we mistake for strength." He looked down. "After my wife died, I threw myself into this place. I thought if I could save everyone else, maybe I could save the part of her that's still here." Evelyn's eyes softened. "And maybe you did, in a way you'll never see." Their gaze held, not romantic, but human. The quiet recognition of two people surviving different kinds of loss under the same roof. Emma suddenly held up a drawing she'd been hiding behind her back, this one different. It showed the hospital, tall and blue, with stick figures in every window. "It's everyone," she said proudly. "All the people who help other people." Michael crouched beside her. "You even drew the cafeteria," he said, chuckling. "Yup, and Nurse Evelyn's there too." Evelyn smiled, but her voice came out softer than she meant. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." Emma pointed to one stick figure near the top. "That's you, Daddy. You're fixing the big machine that makes people better." Michael's throat tightened. "That's what you think I do." Emma nodded confidently. "You You fix broken hearts." Her innocent words hit like sunlight through a storm cloud. "Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could. Or never if it would break you to deeply." Evelyn felt the air shift, heavy but healing. She looked at Michael, the anger that once sat between them now dissolving into quiet respect. She's not wrong, Evelyn whispered. You do fix hearts, just not the way you think. Michael exhaled, the tightness in his jaw finally loosening. And you remind me what compassion looks like when it's tired. They shared a faint, tired laugh, the kind that comes when sorrow finally learns how to breathe again. Emma was coloring again, the soft scratch of crayon filling the silence. When I grow up, she said suddenly, I want to help people too. Like Mommy, like Nurse Evelyn. Evelyn smiled, blinking back tears. You already do, Emma. You helped me remember why I started. Michael's voice was low. She has that effect. A nurse peeked in from the doorway. Dr. Turner, radiology's ready for her in 20. He nodded. We'll be there. When they left for the scan, Evelyn stayed behind, tidying the small mess of crayons and napkins. On the bedside table, she noticed Emma's newest drawing, unfinished, but clear enough to see what it was becoming. A hand reaching down toward another hand. Halfway touching. It wasn't labeled, but Evelyn didn't need words to know what it meant. Forgiveness, connection. A bridge built quietly between strangers. When Emma returned, a Band-Aid decorated her elbow from where they'd drawn blood. Look, it's a rainbow one, she said proudly. Evelyn grinned. That means you were brave. I wasn't scared, Emma replied. I had my nurse and my daddy. That's all I need. Michael looked down at her, and then at Evelyn. You really were here when I couldn't be. Evelyn shrugged lightly. We all step in for someone sometimes. That's how the world keeps going. As the day drew to a close, the results came back. Clear lungs. No infection. Recovery steady. Discharge in 48 hours. When Michael told her, Emma clapped her hands. Home, home. Evelyn laughed softly. Home, home, she echoed. As the evening light dimmed to a gentle glow, Evelyn stood by the window, watching the city breathe. For once, she didn't feel small within it. She felt part of something. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the scars of exhaustion and regret, forgiveness finally found its way in, not loud, but certain. The discharge papers lay neatly folded on the counter, a final chapter waiting for a signature. Outside, the world had turned to gold, late afternoon sunlight streaking through the windows, dust floating like quiet applause. Emma was packing her things with all the seriousness of a world traveler. Teddy bear, crayons, half-finished drawings, and one paper flower Evelyn had given her. Don't forget Teddy's mask, Evelyn said, smiling. I won't, Emma grinned, adjusting it carefully over the bear's stitched smile. Michael stood near the doorway, holding his daughter's small backpack. You sure you've got everything, bub? She nodded, though her eyes flickered toward Evelyn. I think so. It hit Evelyn then, how quickly moments become memories. Just days ago, she'd been shouting without seeing. Now, this child had filled cracks she didn't even know she had. Michael noticed her hesitation. You okay? She forced a smile. Yeah, just. Not used to goodbyes that feel like beginnings. He nodded, understanding more than he said. I'll make sure she comes by for her checkups. She'll be excited to see you. Evelyn's voice softened. You both will be fine. Emma tugged on her sleeve. Can I tell you a secret? Evelyn knelt. Of course, Emma leaned in, whispering, when people are mean, it's usually because their heart's tired. That's what Mommy used to say. Evelyn blinked, emotion catching in her chest. Your mom was a very wise woman. She said if we forgive, our hearts get to rest. The sentence landed like sunlight breaking through a storm cloud. Evelyn swallowed hard, fighting the lump in her throat. Then I think you just taught me something I forgot, she whispered. Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could. Or never if it would break you too deeply. Michael was watching them quietly, eyes soft with the kind of understanding that only comes after pain. He stepped closer, offering his hand. I owe you more than an apology, Nurse Evelyn. I owe you thanks. You don't owe me anything, she said. Just keep reminding her the world still has good people in it. I think she's the one reminding us. He replied. Emma giggled, tugging on his coat. Daddy, she's blushing. Evelyn laughed despite the tears threatening behind her smile. Guilty. As they left the room, Evelyn followed them to the elevators. The hallway that once felt cold now seemed softer, warmer somehow. The scent of disinfectant was still there, but beneath it was something else, peace. When the elevator doors opened, Emma waved one last time. "Bye, Nurse Evelyn. I'll draw you something next time." "I'll be waiting," Evelyn said, voice trembling just enough to betray her heart. The doors closed. Silence returned. She stood there for a while, the echoes of their laughter still ringing faintly in her ears. Then she turned toward the window, where the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. Her reflection looked different, still tired, still human, but lighter. She didn't notice the footsteps behind her until a voice spoke. "Long day." It was Lily, leaning against the wall with 2 coffees in hand. "You could say that," Evelyn replied. Taking one, Lily smiled knowingly. "I heard about Emma. You handled it beautifully." Evelyn shook her head. "No, I handled it wrong at first. And maybe that's why I needed to fix it." "That's how it works," Lily said softly. "Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It just lets you stop holding your breath." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Yeah, feels like I've been holding it for years." The intercom crackled overhead, announcing shift changes. Evelyn sighed. "Guess it's back to reality." Lily nudged her. "Reality's not so bad when it teaches you something." Evelyn turned to the window again. The sun almost gone now, just streaks of color left behind. "You know," she said, "I think that little girl came to heal more than herself." Lily tilted her head. "You mean you?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "Me. And maybe her dad too." They stood in silence for a long moment, watching the sky fade. Down in the parking lot, Michael was buckling Emma into her seat. The little girl held her teddy up to the window, waving it toward the hospital's upper floors. Evelyn couldn't see her from where she stood, but somehow she felt it, that wave, that tiny goodbye filled with something larger than words. In her chest, something. The night shift lights flicked on, soft, steady, 1,000 little stars inside the hospital's walls. Evelyn smiled faintly, whispering to herself, maybe forgiveness isn't about them. Maybe it's about setting your own heart free. The next morning, the world outside shimmered under a clear sky. The hospital courtyard was alive with the sound of rustling trees and distant laughter, volunteers setting up for Family Health Day. A tradition meant to remind everyone that hospitals could be about living, not just surviving. Evelyn stood by the window, a paper cup of coffee cooling in her hands. She'd slept for the first time in weeks, not long, but deep enough that the nightmares of failure had faded into softer dreams. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Mind if I come in?" Michael stood there, casual in jeans and a soft jacket. He wasn't the commanding director now, just a father with kind eyes. "Of course," she said, surprised but not unwelcome. "Did you forget something?" He smiled faintly. "Not exactly. Emma insisted we stop by before heading to the park. She wanted to give you this." He handed her a folded piece of paper, the edges smudged with crayon. Evelyn unfolded it carefully. It was another drawing, this time of 3 hearts connected by a golden thread. Above them, Emma had written in crooked letters, "For Nurse Evelyn, who helps people smile again." Her throat tightened. "She really shouldn't have." "She wanted to," Michael said. "Said you needed something happy to hang on the wall." Evelyn laughed softly, blinking fast. "She's right about that." He leaned against the doorway, watching her trace the drawing with her fingertips. "She talks about you a lot. You made quite an impression." "I didn't do much," Evelyn said. "Just listened. That's more than most people do," he replied quietly. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that doesn't demand to be filled. After a moment, Michael said, "We're hosting a small thank you lunch next week for the pediatric staff. Emma insisted your name be on the list." Evelyn chuckled. "She's the boss now, huh?" "She's always been," he said, smiling. Then his voice softened. "I wanted to say this properly. I was harsh that day. I know why you reacted the way you did. I've been in this place long enough to see what exhaustion does. You didn't deserve the way I spoke to you." Evelyn met his gaze, steady and calm. "You were scared. I understand that now." He nodded. "Still, I should have seen the person behind the uniform, if it makes you feel any better." She said gently, "You did, eventually." They both laughed quietly. The air felt lighter somehow, like two old wounds had decided to stop bleeding. A nurse passing by peeked in, smiling. "You'd look like a Hallmark movie," she teased. Michael chuckled. Trust me, I don't have the energy for drama anymore. Evelyn smirked. Then maybe it's time for peace instead. The laughter lingered even after the nurse left. Michael glanced at the paper in her hand again. You're keeping it. Of course, she said, placing it gently on her desk. It's a reminder that sometimes grace walks in when you least deserve it. He studied her for a moment, then said quietly, you know, after all that's happened, I think I finally understand what this place is supposed to mean. Healing isn't just medicine. It's people showing up for each other when it's hardest. Evelyn smiled. That's what it's always meant. He nodded, looking out at the courtyard. She's waiting in the car. Said she wanted to draw the sky today. Evelyn followed his gaze. The sunlight reflected off the windshield below, and she could just make out Emma waving from the back seat. She waved back, her chest full in the best way. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Michael turned to leave, then paused at the door. You should come to the event, he said. Emma would love to see you. Evelyn hesitated for only a second before nodding. I'll be there. Good, he said, smiling. Maybe we all need a reminder of the good days. When he left, the room felt both empty and full. Evelyn stood still for a long time, looking at the crayon hearts. The golden thread shimmered faintly where Emma's pencil had pressed hardest, connecting every line, proof that even the smallest hands could draw something infinite. Outside, laughter rose again from the courtyard. Balloons bobbed in the wind, and somewhere, a child squealed with joy. Evelyn smiled, whispering to herself, love really does win, doesn't it? She pinned Emma's drawing above her workstation, right next to the patient safety checklist, a quiet rebellion against the mechanical. A reminder that hearts mattered as much as protocols. The pager on her belt buzzed again. A new patient. Room 12. She took a deep breath, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. This time, she was ready to see more than symptoms, and somewhere inside, she knew the woman who had shouted in the hallway that day was gone. What remained was someone softer, steadier, reborn through a little girl's kindness. The day of the family health event arrived bathed in sunlight. The hospital courtyard had transformed overnight. Strings of white flags fluttered above tables lined with paper cups, flowers, and laughter. Nurses mingled with families. Doctors traded their coats for smiles, and for once, the air didn't carry urgency, but warmth. Evelyn stood at the edge of the crowd, a soft breeze tugging at her hair. She wore a simple pastel blouse instead of scrubs, her ID tucked away. Today she wasn't a nurse on duty. She was just Evelyn, a woman who'd learned that healing sometimes comes from the smallest voices. Evelyn. She turned just in time to see Emma barreling toward her, teddy bear bouncing from her backpack. Michael followed close behind, waving. Hey, sunshine, Evelyn said, crouching to meet her. You look healthy. Emma spun in a little circle, giggling. I'm all better. Daddy says I'm stronger than before. I believe him, Evelyn said with a grin. Michael reached them, smiling with that quiet steadiness she'd come to recognize. You actually came, he said. I promised, didn't I? You did. His voice was soft. Emma's been waiting all morning. I had to make sure my favorite artist was ready to sign autographs, Evelyn teased. Emma laughed, proudly holding up a small folded card. I made something. Evelyn opened it, a drawing of the hospital courtyard just as it looked now. Families, balloons, and 3 familiar figures in the center, Emma, her father, and a nurse in blue holding hands beneath the sun. Above it, in clumsy handwriting, Emma had written, "We all get better when we care." Tears stung behind Evelyn's eyes. This is beautiful, Emma. It's true, right? Emma asked, serious for a moment. Even big people need help to get better sometimes. Evelyn smiled through the lump in her throat. Especially big people. Michael crouched beside his daughter, resting a hand on her shoulder. See, kiddo, you taught Nurse Evelyn something important. Emma nodded proudly. Then can I be a doctor too? You can be whatever you want, Evelyn whispered. The laughter, the color, the sunlight. It all swirled around them like the world itself was exhaling. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt whole. The sharp edges of guilt and exhaustion had worn smooth, replaced by something quieter but stronger. Michael looked at her, his tone sincere. You know, I used to think hospitals were where life paused, but maybe they're where people start again. Evelyn met his gaze. I think that's true for both of us. He nodded, eyes soft. Emma's right. We all get better when we care. A volunteer on the loudspeaker called out for the children's art showcase, and Emma bounced on her heels. That's me. Go on, Michael said, laughing. Show them what you've made. Emma darted off toward the stage, her ponytail swinging like sunlight in motion. Evelyn watched her climb the small steps and proudly hold up her drawing for the crowd. Applause erupted, pure, kind, real. Evelyn glanced at Michael. He looked up at his daughter, pride shining through the tiredness. In that moment, she saw not the hospital director, not the grieving husband, just a father who'd found light again. He caught her looking, smiled faintly, and said, "Funny thing, I used to walk these halls thinking leadership meant control. Turns out, it means humility." Evelyn nodded. "And sometimes, forgiveness." He exhaled, the words settling between them like a quiet truth. "You've given both. Maybe I just finally learned how to see," she replied. They stood there, side by side, as laughter filled the courtyard, the sound of life continuing, of healing not written in charts, but in moments. When Emma ran back, metal around her neck and a grin that could outshine the sun, she held her bear up high. "We did it." "Yes, you did," Evelyn said, scooping her into a hug. Michael looked at them both, this strange, unexpected trio bound not by blood, but by grace, and for a heartbeat, everything felt exactly as it should. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you," as the sun began to sink behind the hospital. Golden light wrapped around the courtyard like a benediction. Evelyn stood watching Emma chase bubbles, her laughter echoing through the air, pure, endless, unbroken. Michael turned to her, voice low. "You know, she used to be afraid of saying goodbye." Evelyn smiled. "That's okay." "So was I," he nodded, following his daughter's laughter. "But now, it's not goodbye, is it?" She shook her head gently. "No, just another chance to begin again." The camera of life would have lingered there, sunlight. And somewhere deep inside, Evelyn whispered to herself, some stories don't end in loss. They end in love finding its way back. The world faded into gold, and the last shot was simple.